Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Wolfie's Wheels. Today we need to change the fuel pump on Raymond the 2CV. I've never done the job before. What can possibly go wrong? I'm sure quite a lot can. So stay tuned to find out how it goes. Okay, so today, as I said, we're going to be fitting a new fuel pump to Raymond the 2CV. I did debate whether I would or wouldn't make this film, but having looked on YouTube for some information on how to do this job, there wasn't very much, if anything, on it. So I thought I'd better put a film together myself. I'm not saying that this is the best way or the right way. It's how I've done the job. You may have a better way, that's fine, not a problem. And as I say, I've not done this before. I don't know what's going to go wrong. So at least if you've got this job to do, you might be able to learn from my mistakes. I've bought a new fuel pump here from Burton 2CV, and that comes complete with the gaskets and everything else that you need to fit it. I also bought a new spacer which fits beneath the fuel pump, between the fuel pump and the block. I don't know if I actually need that or not. I thought while the job's being done I might as well do that. And I've also got some new fuel lines to put on as well. So why did I think it was necessary to change the fuel pump on the 2CV? Well, the answer is that it wasn't starting last time I tried to use it, and I diagnosed that this pipe here, which goes to the carburetor feed there and goes down to the fuel pump down there somewhere, when you crank the engine you should be getting fuel out at the end of here, and I was getting none, even though I knew there was plenty of fuel in the car because I could see some in the fuel filter, which, if you like, is on the tank side, the south side of the fuel pump. So it's got fuel, but it isn't getting through. So I diagnosed that with the help of Haynes manual and a bit of logic that it's probably the fuel pump which is giving up the ghost. So in the kit that I got from Burton 2CV, you get the fuel pump, which is here, bolts on sort of thusly. This goes to the carburetor, and it goes to the fuel tank at that end, and it's got this priming lever on it here, which enables you to draw fuel through to the carburetor without cranking the engine. It comes complete with appropriate gaskets. To do the job, you're going to need an 11mm spanner. This is a box spanner which is actually 15 centimeters long, and believe it or not, isn't quite long enough to do the job easily. So I've got to bodge it a bit by also using this spanner on the outside of it, and you'll need a screwdriver, of course, to undo various fuel hoses and fuel clips. So without further ado, let's crack on. So where is the fuel pump located? As I say, it's just down here. I've taken the thing off. There are two bolts that hold the fuel pump in. Hopefully we can see with this extra bit of light. One's there, and one is just that side of it there. And then, of course, you've got the fuel pipe at the bottom going in to take off. So I'm going to use the 11mm box spanner and take those two bolts out as the next step. So I've managed to crack off one of the nuts, but this front one is really awkward to get to because all of this, I mean, that's fixed. The dipstick is in the way, but I can remove this return spring and hopefully that will go back on easily enough, because there's just no room to work on this. And even, to be fair, this bonnet stays getting in the way. Well, that didn't go so well, did it? Some real manly injuries. The throttle spring, or whatever that spring is still on, still in the way. So I'm going to just try and work around it. Eventually, after a fair bit of effing and jeffing and literally blood being drawn, as you can perhaps see, the fuel pump is now free to move. It is, of course, however, attached at the bottom end, and that means disconnecting it from the fuel tank, and that means there's a potential leakage of petrol everywhere. So you need to find a way of bunging up the main fuel feed, and that requires a 10mm bolt to go in the end of the pipe, which I've got. I mean, in theory you can just disconnect it and draw the fuel pump upwards, but I've actually got a fuel filter attached, so I've got to disconnect it from the fuel filter to start with, and then disconnect the fuel filter, because the fuel filter is going to be too big to drag up through the engine. So it's a double stage job here. As I said, I need to find a way of stopping the fuel coming from the tank, and was going to take the fuel filter off of both parts of the pipe, and then bung up the end nearest to the tank with the 10mm bolt. But I do actually also have this, which is a piece of fuel pipe with a non-return valve in it. So I'm thinking that if I put this on the pump side of the filter with the non-return valve facing the wrong way, as it were, it should hopefully stop the fuel coming through from the tank. So, as I said earlier, what can possibly go wrong? Well, we might be about to find out something. The hose, of course, it's quite a cold day today, so the hose is a bit hard. So I've brought with me a flask of hot water, and I'm going to dip this end in the hot water for a bit while I crack on with the next bit of the job, which is investigating taking the fuel pipes off. So that it will actually slip on easier, because once these are warmed up, they're nice and soft. So this is where things could go potentially pretty horribly wrong. This is a fuel filter. This is a pipe I've got to take off, and I've got to hope to not spill too much fuel. I've loosened off this thing here, and it's now a matter of trying to remove that, and that is very hard on there. So what I'm going to do is cut it off. Hope that that works okay. So I've not got a lot of choice other than to cut through this pipe, which is not really a problem because it's surplus to requirements anyway. It needs to be replaced. So carefully place the incision there, and a new bit of pipe there, and let's just hope this all comes apart. It's obviously fairly robust. So after a few minutes I did manage to get myself through that pipe, put that on there, the non-return valve facing the wrong way, and it seems to be okay. I think as a precaution I'm going to shove a 10mm bolt just up the end of there as well, just to be double sure. Right, so now we've got all of that lot of paraphernalia removed from the bottom end. Hopefully it's a matter now of just reaching in and fishing out the fuel pump, although there appear to be bits in the way, so it might not be quite as straightforward as I hope. Fuel pump should be all loose. Should be able to pull it up now. Of course it's still being held on by various pipes apparently, which are obviously clipped somehow, so I'm going to have to go back underneath and have a look. For a lot of fiddling about I managed to work this through, and there we have the fuel pump removed. Well, hooray and hurrah. The first thing to do is to put a new fuel pipe on the bottom end here, and then onto the new pump, and we might as well fit a new fuel pipe at the top as well to the carburettor while we're at it, and it's going to be easy to put both those pipes on before we try and install the new pump. So we've now got the hoses on the fuel pump, which looks like this. So you've got, that's the one to the carburettor, and the fuel pump, and then this one that goes down to the fuel filter and ultimately to the fuel tank. I've got to refit the fuel pump. There is a shaft that sticks out of the engine which goes into this little bit here. You can see, very badly indicated by me, but it's about there, which you've got to line up, and you've got to line up the bolts, and you've got to line up the bottom plate and the two gaskets. So this could take a bit of time, so I shall come back to you shortly. Okay, well that didn't quite work out as I'd expected it to, and this is certainly not the ending on the film that I expected to be putting on. I thought it would be me victoriously cranking over the 2CV and it's starting, and happy smiles and happy days everywhere. However, this is a few days later, in fact probably about a week after I started to do the other job. So let's recap on what actually went wrong. Well, we do have a nice new shiny fuel pump, which is kind of down there just at the end of my finger, and that got itself fitted reasonably well. And I say reasonably well because I did actually manage to lose one of the M7 bolts that holds, one of the two in fact, M7 bolts that hold the fuel pump to the cases. Both of them did actually fall out, and I found one, but the other one I spent quite literally an hour looking for and gave up in the end. I've got a long magnet on a stick, like a car aerial type of thing with a magnet on the end. That successfully recovered one of the bolts, but the other one, God knows where it is. Let's just hope it hasn't gone anywhere where it can cause mischief later on. But talking to some guys who know more than me, mechanics, it's not unusual to lose sockets and stuff, and who knows where they are. It's some god of mechanicking probably takes them away as some sacrificial offering. Anyway, I didn't have another M7 bolt, so that caused quite a lot of head scratching, and I came to a different conclusion on that, and that was that Citroen probably didn't only use one M7 bolt in the whole car. There must be another way of doing it. There might be one that's sort of slightly redundant. I discovered that down here, which holds the bonnet catch on, are in fact two of the right bolts, and so I sort of borrowed one from there, and I'll get another one for down here, so the bonnet catch is held on properly a bit later on. But it cost me a lot of time. So that was also successful, and I then attempted to start the car and nothing happened. Oh dear. So I took off the feed to the carburettor from the top of the fuel pump and cranked for all it was worth, and no fuel came out. What have I done wrong? So I went on forums, on 2CV groups for Yorkshire in particular, and the received wisdom was there's probably a split in a hose further up the food chain. Particularly prone is one near the fuel tank, and if that's letting air in, then that's what would happen. So I then decided that that was kind of beyond me. So I got hold of Alan Rogers at Citroen's, who very kindly came out to my home and fixed the car this morning for me. And of course, if you know what you're doing, these jobs are relatively straightforward. I think what took Alan about 3 hours to do was a straightforward job. And that time, by the way, included, we checked the tappets, took the wings off and did some other work on the car. The man just made it look so straightforward. It probably would have taken me ages, as in a couple of days. The culprit is indeed a small section of hose, which is in the fuel tank, joins the long pipe that runs along the entire chassis to the fuel tank. And as you can see there, it's split. It's split. It doesn't sort of perform its useful duty. And that obviously was sucking in air and not fuel. And that is the problem. And to be fair, I probably didn't need to do anything with the fuel pump at all. It was probably down to that split pipe all along. Anyhow, all is well. And the car is now back in rude health. I say rude health. As I've mentioned on the channel before, I think that the car's running, Raymond is running a bit rich, and given that I'm only getting 29 to the gallon out of it at the moment, Alan kind of thought the same as well. So I'm going to have to take it along to his workshops, and he can put his special diagnostic equipment and run his healing hands over it once more. And then hopefully the car will be running absolutely as Andre Citroen intended. And that there, I think I'm going to call that a wrap. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, maybe learned something, I don't know, even if it was only not how to do it. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, share it with your mates, and feel free to subscribe. And in the meantime, I'll see you in a future episode of A Wolfie's Wheels. Bye.